Hello and welcome back to the Football Heritage Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Bryce, and I'm joined this morning by Rob Edwards, the current head of Morley Sports Management, who are the new owners of Hamilton Academical Football Club. Rob, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this morning.
My pleasure. I look forward to a chat.
Yeah, me too. Today we are going to be talking everything about Rob stepping in to save Hamilton Academical. For those of our listeners who aren't aware, Hamilton have been in a crisis state over the last 18 months or so, kind of lurching from crisis to crisis on the ownership front, and especially when it comes to finances. This was really down to the previous owner who was in charge, who left them in an untenable position, which is when another group stepped in called the Funding Globe a few weeks later. They also left Hamilton Academical and left them in an even worse position, and that's when Rob stepped in as head of Morley Sports Management. Morley Sports Management also own Haverfordwest in Wales, as well as Ohio Valley Wrestling, and are involved in a number of other consultancy projects with the likes of Chelsea, Fulham, McLaren. They've got a wealth of experience. But just before we kick things off properly, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, no, look, that's a good synopsis. Look, we're a sports management operators. We obviously have a controlling interest, which you mentioned. We're building out the service provision element to obviously generate additional value to the business, but also to bring in revenue to support our existing projects and continue to expand. We've found a bit of a niche for distressed legacy assets, so that's kind of our market at the moment. But it would be nice to find opportunities where it's not quite so much of a turnaround, and we can implement some ideas straight off the bat and take things forward. So look, we have obviously a track record within sport in terms of being able to turn around and develop sports businesses, with a key focus, as I said, on legacy, creating new messaging, playing on that historical identity, but I guess portraying it in a way that suits the modern times and shows the ambition to take these businesses up to new heights. And we want to continue doing that. So Hamilton is our current project, which is taking a huge amount of our resource at the moment to try and turn around. We saved it at that point. Have we officially saved Hamilton? No, not yet. There's a lot to do, but we're enjoying the challenge, and we're still confident we can turn it around. And in 6 months' time, we can look back with our heads held high and continue to develop. But also, as I said, we're always on the lookout for new challenges to expand our group, to expand our team, to be able to take on new opportunities. And I think the more success we have on all fronts, the more opportunities it will open up. So that's we're not kind of resting on our laurels. We want to grow MSM as a business and see how far we can take it and see what opportunities are around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, like you alluded to there, and I can't speak for Haverfordwest, but in terms of Hamilton, I think in a lot of ways they really were one of Scotland's almost forgotten clubs, because for a while and for a long time, Hamilton have been treading water with their support. They've been treading water with how they've been operating. You know, I stay 20 minutes from Hamilton. My family have worked in Hamilton for years, so kind of seen it unfold, you know, with Old Douglas Park being sold. Since then, it really just kind of has been a downward trajectory. A lot of people within Hamilton don't feel connected to the football club, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on, and it's led to this serious decline in support since then. But since you stepped in, things seem to be turning around and seem to be coming back a little bit. And again, I'll touch on this. I say to the town, it's not necessarily true in this case, but that is one of your plans. Hamilton have always kind of been, I'd say, one of the middling clubs within Scotland. Historically, probably a second tier or third tier team. They've won a couple of Challenge Cups here and there. They enjoyed quite a sustained spell in the Scottish Premiership, I think maybe 10, 12 years ago. And if people think further back, under the reign of Alex Neil, which was really one of the club's best eras. And obviously enjoyed some historic results against Celtic and Rangers as well. But since they were relegated from the top flight in 2021, I think that was 2020-21, things have really gone downhill for the club. There was then a further relegation into League One, and that's when all of these issues really started coming to the fore in terms of finances and how the club was actually being run. And then, incredibly, Hamilton decided to move out of Hamilton and move to Broadwood, which is in North Lanarkshire. Hamilton are based in South Lanarkshire. It's about 12, 13 miles from Hamilton in Cumbernauld. The stadium, Broadwood itself, is a bit of a nightmare to get to. And the academy was also shut down, which Hamilton has always been renowned for. producing incredible talents through that academy, and something that a lot of parents and children and young people playing football in Hamilton were really attached to and had an incredible legacy with. All of a sudden, within the space of about a year, none of this existed, and it left the club in such a perilous state because of it. That's the focus of our conversation today. Obviously, how you've stepped in and managed to kind of steady the ship, I suppose, Rob, but also how doing all these things can lead to the serious erosion and almost destruction of how people feel connected to their football clubs, especially when you take things like the community into account like that.
Yeah, Hamilton have, as you've alluded to, they've been through the wars, particularly over the last 5-6 years. I think there's elements beyond that, but if we focus purely on the immediate history, the club's got great stature within Scottish football, not just Scottish football, but world football. I've said this on a number of podcasts or interviews that I've done, in that I was in Kentucky when this opportunity came about, and I mentioned it to a guy in the middle of nowhere, and he knew they were called the Accies. He knew they played in red and white. He knew they were a Scottish football team. So it's got a huge amount of provenance to it, and for any club to go through what Hamilton have gone through is something that any real football fan wouldn't want to see. As a Leyton Orient fan, we were through it. We had an absolute lunatic of an Italian owner who duly got the club tens of millions into debt and pretty much, out of the Football League and pretty much out of existence until somebody stepped in. I think the new owners at that point came in with very little handover. I think they did payroll manually just to get people paid on time, and had to build an entire new team. I think slightly different challenges here, but some probably considerably worse with regards to, I guess, governance of how the club was run previously. The stigma that's attached to the club in terms of its reputation and wrongdoings and how people perceive Hamilton. So there was a huge amount of negatives hanging around the club, and there's still challenges that we need to overcome. But what we've seen is there's a hugely passionate fan base. That's one of the reasons why we're here. Since we came in, so many people have reached out from local authority. The first game we went up, I think it's 2-3 weeks ago now, when we played Cove, there was a couple of local MPs that wanted to have a discussion and understand what the plans were and see how they can support companies locally wanting to reach out and sponsor the club going forward. Fans wanting to buy merchandise, and again, look, we're still playing at Broadwood, but the attendances have been pretty good since going back, and there's definitely more appetite to go back and support the team. It's always our intention to play in Hamilton, whether that's New Douglas Park or wherever it may be down the line. Is our intention to get back there on our terms, and hopefully that will further galvanise people and get the attendances back to where they probably would have been 5-6 years ago. So there's a huge amount going for it in terms of its history, the size of the club, the location. But yeah, it's in a really grave period of its history with regards to obviously administration and general existence still hanging over it to some extent. So the academy you mentioned is not allowed to be operational at the moment, which is something we're looking to turn around at some point. The alienation of the women's team. We've had discussions already about bringing everything back under the same umbrella and working together. The community impact is minimal, which there's obviously a lot that we can do in and around the town, whether we're in Broadwood or whether we are in New Douglas Park. I think there's still an element that we need to do to re-engage with the community. So there's huge potential, and hopefully that at the moment there's just some light at the end of the tunnel for people that, yes, there's still a huge amount of challenges to overcome, but we're up for it. And I think we have the backing for the most part of people in terms of being able to get behind us and kind of guide us through it. Yeah,
I would say so. I think obviously you mentioned reputation there, and I think it's quite important to touch on the reputation of Hamilton within the rest of Scottish football. And for a while, a lot of people filed Hamilton under the same mould as Dundee, for instance, where everyone was able to have a bit of a laugh at Hamilton's expense. And it was because of how the club was being run. There was a whole thing a couple of years back about social media accounts. Someone had been running the official Accies account but wasn't associated with the club. When the transfer embargo was hit and the former ownership were trying to sign amateur players on pro contracts to try and circumvent that, and it's led to more issues. Like it was a huge amount of issues that made the club look really amateurish, and that was part of the problem. But Hamilton have such a great history and legacy. They're one of Scotland's oldest clubs. They're one of the oldest clubs in South Lanarkshire. they've come from such an interesting route within South Lanarkshire and around Hamilton in particular. You know, a lot of the places where the club originally played don't exist anymore. You can't go and visit them. To have this reputation attached to them, especially after having such a well-renowned academy, especially, which is a big sticking point, is just absolutely incredible. And obviously this all came to a head 6 months ago now, certainly towards the end of last year, when the club was days, if not hours away from ceasing to exist. Just to give our listeners and myself an idea of what it was you were facing, what did you come into on day one?
I was trying to put this politely. It's unfathomable, I would say. We knew coming in that we weren't going to get a handover. We weren't going to be able to walk into a clear picture. Taking over any business is always challenging when you have complete clarity on exactly what the financial situation is, what the creditor position is, what the operational HR position is. We had none of that in reality. We knew it was going to be extremely difficult. Even as of today, there's surprises that we have to overcome. There's a lot publicly, which it's not really our style, but there seems to be a desire to portray any story, anything imaginable within local media and further afield. We've tried not to engage with a lot of that, just focus on keeping people updated as and when we feel we need to update the situation. Other than that, we're working hard, just leave us to it. And I think that message has definitely been acknowledged by most of the fan base, which is great. And I think the stories out there are gradually slowing down as those in the know are not really in the know anymore with regards to what's going on in the club. So there's the credibility shot to pieces. You alluded to that. The club's been seen as a laughing stock. Been deducted a record number of points. I think it's 38 in the last 2 years. The fact that we're 21 points down this season and still not in the relegation zone directly is a credit to the staff and players that have kept going and kept focus, and results since we took over have been really good. I think it's 3 wins and a draw from the last 5 games. The only defeat coming to the top of the league, which probably deserves something from that game. So definitely focus on the pitch has been good, and we've tried to support Darian and Dylan and the coaching staff as much as possible with regards to improving the squad. So there's a lot of positives in that sense. So coming in, great group of staff, players, people involved in the club that we're enjoying working with. I guess it's the unknown challenges that are really the ones that are testing us at the moment, and we're very direct, open, honest with everybody with regards to the situation. We're doing our best to protect not just the club, ourselves, staff, but also trying to protect the creditors, because administration or insolvency is going to be of no benefit to anybody.
No.
Liquidation, even worse. The club ceasing to exist is something that no one would want to see, particularly of a club with Hamilton's size and its history. So we've tried to be really open and transparent. Unfortunately, not everyone has been the same, and there's issues that we kind of have to retrospectively try to fix rather than proactively, which has been our main focus is addressing problems head on and trying to find resolutions before they get to a point where it causes the business distress. So yeah, it's more so the silent challenges that are causing us the most problems. Everything we know about, we're trying our best to focus head on, put processes in place, trying to get as much handover and as much history on cases that are ongoing on and off the pitch is, it's been difficult. But yeah, every day we're getting a bit closer. We're getting a bit closer to understanding the full clarity of the situation and trying to put plans in place. I wouldn't say we're necessarily any closer to survival than we were 6 weeks ago, because we still have to continue to liaise and meet certain requirements and carry out certain actions to ensure that we're in a much better place going forward. So it's hard to give a huge amount of detail. I don't want to come across as kind of cliche and using fluffy words, but it is really a case of just dealing with things. As I've said, there's many challenges which we knew would be in place, and there's also many challenges that we probably weren't expecting. But as I said, day by day we're getting more and more clarity, I guess more and more confidence in our ability to turn it around. But yeah, we still relying on other people playing ball and working with us, which has not always been the case, and probably won't over the next few months. But yeah, we're doing everything that we possibly can to ease that transition and ensure that we're a going concern going forward.
Yeah, deeds not words, but I think that heads-on approach has proven that. And just from my perspective, obviously you're pretty active on social media, and for the owner of a club to be so transparent and open to different discussions like this within Scottish football is relatively rare. And the people that support the club have resonated with that. I think everyone is very much singing from the same hymn sheet now, where they know that this season is about survival, both as a football club and in League One at the very least. And then, as you've mentioned there, once the challenges are out the road, then you can move forward with longer term visions for the club. But right now, everyone knows that survival is key and the number one priority. And I think that heads-on approach speaks to that. It's what people wanted to see, but you have also managed to rally supporters around you, obviously by virtue of not being the previous ownership group. You know, the bar wasn't very high, but being able to rally a support like that when they are so down in their luck. And we can use Morecambe as an example, who were begging for someone to save their club, but even the people who did, they weren't entirely convinced by, but they were just happy someone had stepped in to save the club. Whereas in this case, people don't feel like that. And they see someone who is actually going to take Hamilton forward into what is going to hopefully be a new era.
Yeah, no, I think when we took over Haverfordwest, well, nearly 6 years ago in May, we'd never been involved in football before. There was no book to say this is how you run a football club, this is how you communicate with media, this is how you communicate with staff, fans. We just kind of did everything that we thought was the right thing to do, and possibly sometimes a bit too active on social media has got me in trouble over the past. So I've toned things down a little bit. But I think it's important. The fans have been scarred by ownership in the past, and I think, like you referenced Morecambe, I guess you can kind of relate it to modern politics. I think if you look at some of the biggest superpowers in the world, should those people be running the country? Probably not. But what is the alternative? So you can be caught up in just change because we need change, or positive change in that the right people are in charge of running the club. I think that the jury's out as to whether we're the right people, because we haven't really achieved a huge amount as yet. But I think we had to be open and transparent, because there'll be a few people that would be dubious. We're not, with all due respect to Haverfordwest, we're not a huge club. OVW is not a WWE. We don't have 20 years of trading history. We're not a multinational, multi-million pound business. We're football operators that have had relative success with what we've been involved in. So I could understand there was some unknowns, and I guess a few people uncertain as to how we would approach it. But yeah, I think we've had to be as open as possible, as we're not reacted to everything that's gone out. We're not going to update people on a daily basis of everything that's going on in the club, because we would never be able to get any work done with the challenges that we're facing. So yeah, we're trying to be, just as I said before, open, transparent, letting fans know that we are working hard in the background. We are visible. The chairman Alan's at every game. We get up as much as we can. My CEO at Haverfordwest, Becky, has been working with the club closely. My first team manager, Tony Pennock, has been working with Darian and the coaching team closely on recruitment and analysis and anything else they need from a football perspective. And we're always on the phone, and we speak to the team on a daily basis. So we are visible internally, and I guess we want to show that externally as well for fans, and that's why I think it's important we engage appropriately on social media. As I said, I've learnt my lessons on how to get feelings across. It's hard to
had your media training.
Yeah, I think I've probably a few workshops needed back in the day, but I think it's hard to. The hardest thing for me at the beginning was disassociate being a fan to someone that runs a football club. You have to think very differently, and it's hard to take away that emotion, particularly when everything's quite new. But I'm a bit more seasoned on that front, so I try and probably learn a few lessons and try and engage in a much better way. But I don't think that will change. I think it's important that we address challenges and we can share in the successes. It's normal for us to be excited and happy when there's positive results, and I think that's important. We show that effect that has on us as a group as well, and how much it means to us when things go well.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said there, I mean, you didn't sugarcoat anything when you came in, but I think obviously that was alluding to the negatives that were going around the club, but that's what supporters wanted to hear because for so long they'd been told lies or they'd had the wool pulled over their eyes. And when that happens to supporters, supporters know that it's happening. And it can do a huge amount of damage for how they feel connected to their football clubs. And this is obviously where our chat regarding heritage comes in. We'll get onto that later. Obviously, you know, you've mentioned Haverfordwest and Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is another organisation that MSN is heavily involved in. What were the challenges that you faced with those two organisations? Were they similar to what's been going on at Hamilton, and were you able to take things from those and apply them here?
Yeah, nothing's really probably ever going to match the situation that we're walking into at Hamilton. I hope not, anyway, for the club's sake. But Haverfordwest was always, particularly in recent times, really well run. Within their means, there was no debt. It was a fairly modest football club in the second tier in Wales, on the verge of promotion. But the directors were very honest that they're in the 70s, that dedicated many decades to ensuring Haverfordwest would not just survive but compete. But then challenges of playing in the top tier in Wales during a pandemic, I think they were honest that they needed somebody to come in and drive it forward, and we put a proposal together, and fortunately we were given the opportunity. So we had no skeletons in the closet. It was pretty much a standing start, and we were able to build something in a really strategic way. And yeah, so proud of what we've achieved during that time, from obviously being newbies into the Cymru Premier to then establishing ourselves and qualifying for Europe. Two of the last 3 seasons, it's been an unbelievable journey and some experiences I'll never forget, playing in North Macedonia and Faroe Islands and Malta in the summer. Our academy's complete transformation, a lot of that is down to the work Becky, Tony and the academy coaches have done. 3 years ago, our under-19s were bottom of the league on negative points because we couldn't fulfil fixtures. Last year we won the treble, which no youth club has ever done in Wales, and we played in the youth equivalent of the Champions League in Montenegro. And it's quite sheltered down in Pembrokeshire, so there's 16, 17-year-olds that have never left Pembrokeshire are now in the capital of Montenegro, playing in the national stadium with ultras and flares and all sorts of stuff going on. Like these experiences, I'm sure many of us, even as board directors, let alone fans and players and parents, would have expected that to happen. So we've had an amazing journey, and we're in the process of just securing investment to move towards full-time football, and that's a point now where we feel we can really establish ourselves as one of the leading players in Wales year on year. So that's our objective there. But coming in the foundation that we had, that enabled us to develop the plan really quickly, 5-6 years, but within the timelines that we wanted to. OVW is kind of a slightly different challenge. Obviously within wrestling, it's a huge name. Some of the biggest talents in the world have come through. They're still competing at the top level. And during Cena's retirement run, there was a huge amount of coverage of OVW on WWE channels, which was great to see. So any wrestling geek, pretty much like any football geek, knows Hamilton Academical. Most wrestling geeks know OVW. After the Netflix show, I don't think there was the bump in the business side of things that they would have expected. Possibly that was not for the business and maybe for others that were involved in it, but OVW didn't flourish off the back of it. So it was still losing considerable amounts of money each month before we took over in May 2025. So yeah, so 8-9 months in. We're not kind of where we want to be yet, but we're moving towards a sustainable business going forward. We've opened up new income opportunities. The awareness is growing considerably locally, but also online and social stats and YouTube views. So we're definitely on the right trajectory. We did have a handover. We were kind of aware of the situation when we came in. There was one or two few small surprises, but I don't think that's particularly uncommon. So although we came in with knowledge, we knew there was going to be more challenges than with Haverfordwest, for example. But we've just had to take one step at a time, try and put processes, procedures in place. We tried to treat OVW as a startup, really, in that it was always run as a wrestling promotion, not necessarily as a wrestling business. So we could just put fundamentals of finance, governance, roles, responsibilities, marketing plan, brand and identity. I think the look and feel of OVW is considerably better than it was 8-9 months ago from a creative point of view. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives, and I'm really excited by where that can go. I mean, in terms of taking that experience into Hamilton, it enables us to be quite process driven with everything that we come into. So we kind of address challenges in the same way. And I think if we get through this period at Hamilton and we go on to other opportunities down the line, we could take so much from all of these three businesses in different aspects. But I think it's just enabled us to just stay focused, grounded, not get too carried away by those things that happen around us, and just keep our head down and work through what we need to work through. So I think in terms of structure and process, we've taken a lot from the previous opportunities into how we deal with this, because although the challenges are different, you have to, firstly, is it something that we can fix? Yes. Okay, let's fix it. No. Okay, well, how can we turn it in our favour? If we can fix it, how do we fix it? I don't think there's an art or a science to it. It's just dealing with problems as you would deal with any challenges inside and outside of business. So we've taken a lot in terms of how we structure and approach these challenges. So there's definitely areas that we've got experience that we can take into this. But as I said, the level and the type of challenge that we're facing are quite unique, I would hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge lesson in problem solving, huge exercise in problem solving. But if we take Haverford West, for instance, then within the next 5 years, we can expect Hamilton to have split the old firm and qualified for the Champions League. Is that the plan?
That'd be nice. Yeah, no, I think we need to. We will have a 5-year plan that we'll work to. Winning the Scottish Premiership is probably a stretch too far, but I think being an established Scottish Premiership club is definitely something that could be achievable, and with that could create cup success or ability to qualify for European competition. I don't think there's any reason why a club like Hamilton can't. I think if you look at clubs like Falkirk, Kilmarnock, with no disrespect to them, they're great clubs, but they're not. I wouldn't say they're head and shoulders above where Hamilton are or where they could be. So I think there's definitely opportunities for clubs like Hamilton to be in compete in that league, and that's why we're here. We want to get them back to where we think they deserve to be, and that's in the Championship in the short medium term, and then in the Premiership longer term. But that will only be achievable if we can deliver what we need to deliver off the pitch. I've said a number of times it has to be revenue driven growth. It's not a case of just throwing money at a problem. I mean, that's what's happened in the past, and ultimately it's led the club to this position. We want the club to thrive whether we're here or not, and we're probably going to need to attract people in to come and help us take that next step. That was always the plan. We were going to come in and steady the ship and create something that is investable to find parties that can help take Hamilton further than we can ourselves. But in the interim, we just need to be a sustainably run football club and competing as high as we can. But there's no reason that can't take us to the levels that they've been at before.
Yeah, it would be great to see Hamilton back in the top flight. It would be great to have a Lanarkshire derby back in the top flight as well. It was always a great spectacle, and obviously, you've mentioned you've got so many short-term challenges to work through, first of all, but I guess one of the mid to long-term ones, once these challenges have been worked through, is getting the club back to Hamilton. And obviously, New Douglas Park, there seems to have been an attachment to New Douglas Park, obviously, and understandably so for many of the Hamilton fans. It's built literally right next to the site of the former park, which is sadly now a retail park. But you kind of touched on this earlier on. I wonder if the club is to return to Hamilton, if it will return to New Douglas Park, or if it's maybe time for somewhere new.
Yeah, to be honest, we haven't really put any attention into where we go and when we relocate. As I said, the main focus right now has just been to ensure that we have a football club next season. We're probably at a point where we need to start thinking about that, and that's something that we need to challenge ourselves over the next few weeks, months, to establish what the short-term plan is for the club. Broadwood have been incredible with us since we've been involved. They're completely open and want to support the club in whatever decision they make. So I don't think there's any restrictions from that point of view. There's certainly desire from fans, the association and local businesses for the club to return to Hamilton. The obvious would be New Douglas Park, so that's definitely an option. But any decision we make has to be the best interests of the club, not because there's a desire for people to play or not play at certain areas. If we decide that Broadwood is the best place for us to play for next season, that's something that we'll do, and we'll communicate our reasons why. It doesn't mean that people will agree, but at least they'll see that people know why we're doing things. So yeah, it's something that we need to really start to think about now over the next weeks, month or so to weigh up the pros and cons of doing that, and whether a deal that we feel is in our interest is achievable. That's something we haven't had any discussion around yet. So it's definitely something we need to focus on relatively soon.
Yeah. How much are supporters and the Supporters Association going to take part in these decisions? I mean, not to a decision-making degree, but in terms of as a stakeholder and how much influence and say they're going to have over it. Because I can imagine that obviously re-engaging with the supporters after what they've been through in the last year. One of the lowest points was when Hamilton fans staged a protest outside of Broadwood, and the club under the previous ownership group took stages to try and charge them with criminal activity, despite, as far as I'm aware, no criminal activity taking place. A serious low point for a lot of Accies fans when the club turns against them like that. So I can imagine that re-engaging with supporters at that level is something that's quite high on your list.
Yeah, we've had a great relationship with the Supporters Association since even before we took over. That was one of our initial avenues to understand, because from the outside looking in before we took over, I didn't really know who we needed to speak to, like on what, how do we attack this situation. So we kind of went through those channels and we had positive discussions, and we still have, like, I think it's really important that the fans have the ability to give input and feedback. We will always do what we think is the right thing to do, but we'll certainly engage and listen, and we're close to announcing more of a formal working partnership with the Supporters Association, so that I think they can see that we are really going to listen and take advice on board and work together to grow the footprint of the club back in Hamilton or wherever we play, but increase the footprint of the club back into the local area, into Scottish football, and turn around the perception of what people have of the club at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we plan to do together. Not every fan is associated with the Supporters Association. There's a number of other groups and people that have different ideas and opinions, and we've been really open to speaking to those as well. We're not kind of monopolizing the voice of the fans through one area. We're certainly open to speak to everybody and understand everyone's concerns and challenges. And we've between myself and Alan and Becky, we've tried to do that as much as possible, and we'll continue to do that and be visible to give people the opportunity to ask those questions. But I think it's important that we don't just say we try to be and put as many positives in the initial communications we've done, but it's important that we actually deliver on that, which is something that we've been really focusing on, because the worst thing we want to do is say, yeah, we're going to listen to the fans and then completely shut up shop. So yeah, we intend to maintain this level of openness throughout however long we're here. So we want to continue to do that. And yeah, we need the fans behind us. We need them to come to games. We need them to tell their friends. We need them to buy shirts. We need them to just paint that feel-good factor again back at the club, which I think is definitely on the right track. And yeah, we need them to keep pushing that. So yeah, really keen to work closely with fans and sponsors and other stakeholders, local community, to make sure it's something that everyone can be proud of and buy into, even if they don't necessarily agree with the decisions we make. They can see the path the club is on.
I think the tell your friends one's really important. I think because of the perception of Hamilton over the years, growing up in South Lanarkshire, not being too far away, obviously you're always going to get that Celtic and Rangers split. But even though our direct transport links are to Hamilton, I'd say the majority of people in school and in Lanark who support a local club go to Motherwell. And I think it's because they view them as being more of an attractive club to go and support than Hamilton. And that has been the perception for many supporters over many, many years. But with the challenges that Hamilton have and how fractured things seem to be with, the kind of supporters base, etc., how is it that you grow the fan base and make Hamilton a worthy club of representing Hamilton?
I think it's messaging and ambition. I think you see it so much now that people are becoming disillusioned with the bigger clubs. You see it in Scotland now with Celtic and Rangers are prime examples. People are disillusioned with how clubs are run, the ambition, the investment, the cost of football. There's a number of factors that are driving people away from the big clubs. As a Leyton Orient fan, growing up, when I used to go with my dad, we'd sit around 4th, 5th generation Leyton Orient fans. Now I sit next to an ex-Tottenham fan, in front of an ex-Arsenal fan, with an ex-Chelsea fan to the left of me and an ex-QPR fan 2 rows back, because they don't feel connected to a football club. So I think football is more not so much about results on the pitch or the levels that you're playing at. I think it's a connection that you have with that club. And if we portray the right message, the right ambition, we create an environment where people just enjoy coming to watch football. It's affordable, it's a good standard, it's safe, they don't feel any kind of discrimination. I think it's important. If we can create the right environment, then people will come regardless as to what division we're in. Like, I know local clubs are doing a great job. Motherwell have seen some great initiatives and with their performances on the pitch at the moment, and I think they're in a really good spot. So it's great to see and great to have that level of competition and quality of clubs around you. But there's such a big catchment and a big demographic there for us to dive into. I think we can certainly create a proposition that people just want to buy into. And I think people love I think you've seen it with Wrexham and even Leyton Orient. We were, even when we were prior to our Italian owner, I think in 13-14, we got to the playoff final in League One. Attendances were 4,000 or 5,000. We went into the National League and we started selling out the stadium because people wanting to buy back into that journey and see it from the ground up. So I think we're in a position where we're not on the ground, but we're not far off it. It's a rebirth as such, and it's just a great story for people to want to, okay, I'm going to go to Hamilton. They've had a tough time, but things seem to be going pretty well. Let's see how far the club can progress. So I think that's very much in the messaging, and it's something we can really start to drive in now over the next few months once the threat of the club's existence or any insolvency action is behind us. We can really start to bang that drum. But it's certainly achievable, and I'm not concerned by the number of clubs or the success of clubs around us to be able to do that. I think we can create a unique proposition that people will buy into.
Yeah, I think people love a redemption arc. People love a redemption story. People like being involved in that. But like you said, I agree with you. It's all about messaging. It's all about creating an image. I think what draws people to football isn't necessarily what happens on the pitch. That is obviously a big factor maybe for some more casual supporters, but for people who want to be involved in something a lot more, you need to tie them into what happens on the pitch, even when things aren't going well. You need to tie them into what the identity of the club is. And obviously that is where the heritage aspects come in, because identity and place are so crucial in making this happen, especially in a place like Lanarkshire where there are so many different and distinct local identities. So within your longer term vision, what do you see the role of heritage being in this new look Hamilton Accies?
I think it's a key part of our messaging. It's hard to create a brand from the ground up. Hamilton has got so much that people know about it. I don't think we necessarily need to reinvent it as such in terms of where it's been. It's just portraying that in a different way and showing that level of ambition, I guess, that people can buy into. For me, a club like Hamilton is a very easy sell because of where it's been, because of the relationship with obviously the academy and being the only professional club from a school still going. The fact it's achieved heights of being in the Premiership, it's won trophies. It's an easy sell. I don't think we necessarily need to go against what the club has stood for 151 years. I think it's just transforming the recent history back into a proactive, credible, ambitious manner and re-engage back in with the community. And I think the rest will kind of take care of itself.
And for the listeners who might not be aware, and I suppose just to remind people again, like you said, it's undoing the perception of the last decade or so of how people have viewed Accies. What would you say is the identity of Hamilton Academical?
Oh, I think it's probably difficult to answer now. I think there's a lot of different perceptions by different people. Those inside and out. Well, those inside the club will probably have different perceptions as well as those outside the club. I think what you can see is it's clearly a passionate community, it's a passionate fan base. I think that goes without saying. I think you can see the level of protest and the level of discontent they've had is because people really care about where the club is going. So it's hard to define, I guess, what we see Hamilton as now. I think the focus will be on where we see Hamilton in 6 months' time, and I think that's probably when we can give you a definitive answer. And I think at that point, I think if you start asking people in Scottish football, not just associating with Hamilton, who Hamilton are, hopefully it's very different to what it is now. I think that's probably how I would sort of cover that point.
I'd agree with you. I think it's like you mentioned, oldest club still going from a school, that's almost unheard of. I think it is that idea you can start off at the very base point and become something that's much bigger than where you started. I think that is the entire point of Hamilton Accies. It's been the point since then, and we've now reached a stage where Hamilton are able to do that. Obviously, you've got we're recording this on the Friday. You've got Alloa away tomorrow. It's going to be a big match. Hamilton are doing pretty well despite the point reductions. Still not in the relegation zone, which is brilliant, and hopefully the club can stay up. What's the current state of play with Accies behind the scenes?
We're working extremely hard. As we said, there's a number of challenges that are hanging over us, which we hope to resolve in the next few weeks. There's a huge amount of structure being put in place, communication, and bridging that gap between, I guess, ownership, board management, and playing staff. I think there's a real collective effort. There's a real togetherness. I think we've been able to instill that in the club fairly quickly, and everyone's just completely on board. As I said, decisions we make internally, people may not agree with or necessarily would have been their route to go, but there's an understanding of what we're trying to do. So again, it's going to be a very different club in the next 3 to 6 months than it is right now. But I'm really happy and proud of everyone's effort so far and the impact that we've been able to achieve, and just try and be a normal football club and try and pre-plan for next season and bring out merchandise and create a match day environment that people want to come into. Like it sounds pretty basic, but there are things that we didn't inherit that we've been able to put in place fairly quickly. So again, it's a work in brief. There's going to be a number of changes over the next few months. There's people that we have in mind that we want to bring in and support us at board level. So we're going to look to expand the makeup of the board and the governance around the club over the next few months, because we do need a huge amount of help. There's a huge amount going on, and as I'm hoping from an operational point of view, but also a reputational point of view, as I said, that people will see Hamilton in a different light over the coming months. That's our sort of main priority.
Yeah, and it does sound daft to a lot of people, but I think a lot of Hamilton supporters would just want the club to be normal. Again, after what's happened over the last few years, everyone's bought in. Do you feel that connection with the supporters, that they feel that they are reconnecting with the club now that you're in place, and that what they feel the club has been, their identity and their heritage, is probably stronger than it has been at any point over the last couple of years?
I hope so. I think there's a huge amount of positivity online. I think there's people that have our backs, particularly with third party distractions and media distractions. There seems to be a collective backing of us and the club, which is great to see, and to have that, I guess, relationship with the fan base fairly quickly again is a testament to the team we've got in place that are working hard to get things moving forward. So I definitely feel a backing, definitely feel a connection. Hopefully that will continue to grow as bigger decisions need to be made over the next few months and longer term in terms of academy, community impact. There's some bigger things that we need to look at. But so far I can't thank people enough for, I guess, the understanding, patience and support that they've given, particularly with what they've been through. I can imagine there's a few that are fairly scarred and very tentative with regards to backing new ownership. But so far, I think really happy with the support that we've been given, and I think hopefully that will continue as we keep going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's been great to see. It's been refreshing having someone within Scottish football who is so transparent with the support, and especially with a supporters base like Hamilton who have really been through the ringer over the last wee while. This is the thing, like, as much as everyone laughs at different football clubs in Scotland, most people seem to take on a bit of a different view when it looks like a club is actually going to fall out of existence. It would be devastating for Hamilton and the rest of South Lanarkshire if the club wasn't there. It's been devastating enough without an academy being there. I think everyone is really in the same boat with wishing you all the best and actually getting the club back to a stable position.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, look, I think rivalries are great. It's what football's all about. Sometimes that can go too far, but I think deep down, no one would want to see someone else's football club cease to exist. And I think you see that rally cry. I'd say 99% of any comments around a club in that situation is a positive rally cry to find a positive outcome for that club to continue. I think anyone that wishes another club and other fans to lose their Saturday afternoons and lose something they did with their parents or their grandparents are not really true football fans and probably shouldn't be acknowledged. But I think generally, there's a huge amount of people that would want Hamilton to survive as they would any other historical club like that.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Rob, this has been a fantastic chat. Is there anything else you'd like to add just before we finish up for today?
No, appreciate the time and the opportunity to keep people up to date with what's going on, and we'll continue to keep working hard.
No, I appreciate your time as well. It's not always we get the chance to interview the owner of a football club and ask him questions about nerdy things like heritage. So thank you very much for giving us your time to do that. To all of our listeners, thank you very much once again for tuning in. If there are any questions you have about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic yourself, you can DM us on any of our social media, or you can also email us at hello@footballheritage.co.uk. We'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.